everybody, and welcome back to our Dracula read-along. I am your host, Monica Van Fleet. I am an independent writer and researcher based out of Philadelphia, and today we are discussing Chapter 14 of Dracula. Chapter 14 of Dracula begins on September 23rd with a journal entry from Mina. Mina writes that Jonathan is better after having a bad night. She is grateful that he has work to keep him busy. Since he is working late, she takes the opportunity to read his Notebook of Transylvania. After reading, she wonders if the events in the journal are real, because that would mean that she and Jonathan saw the Count in Piccadilly. Jonathan's journal is written in shorthand, which she decides to transcribe because if true, she and Jonathan would have a sacred duty to aid in the fight against this ancient and primitive evil. On September 24th, Van Helsing writes to Mina asking to meet with her. He's read Lucy's letters and diary and has questions that she might be able to answer. Mina responds inviting him to her home in Exeter, which at the time was a roughly 6-hour journey from London by train. In an effort to continue improving skills that might be useful to the cause, Mina records her conversation with Van Helsing verbatim. He asks her about the night Lucy went to the churchyard, and Mina presents her shorthand notes and then relates the encounter with the thin man in London. Mina is concerned that Van Helsing will think she's crazy, but he assures Mina that he keeps an open mind about things that seem unreal. She gives Van Helsing Jonathan's transcribed journal, and they agree to meet the next day. The conversation with Van Helsing further reveals that Mina is not a typical Victorian woman. On page 176 of the Norton Critical Edition, Van Helsing says this after reading Jonathan's account of Transylvania. "Oh, Madam Mina," he said, "how can I say what I owe to you? This paper is as sunshine. It opens the gate to me. I am dazed, I am dazzled with so much light, and yet clouds roll in behind the light every time, but that you cannot comprehend. Oh, but I am grateful to you, you so clever woman. Madam," he said this to me very solemnly, "if ever Abraham Van Helsing can do anything for you or yours, I trust you will let me know. It will be pleasure and delight if I may serve you as a friend, but all I have ever learned, all I can ever do, shall be for you and those you love. There are darknesses in life, and there are lights. You are one of the lights. You will have a happy life and a good life, and your husband will be blessed in you." Van Helsing writes Mina assuring her that the events in the notebook actually happened, and that Jonathan, because he had the strength to escape Castle Dracula, will heal. On September 26th, Jonathan makes his first journal entry since escaping the castle after talking with Mina. He relates a conversation that he had with Van Helsing, where the professor assumes the role of the occult detective traditional in Victorian tales of mystery. After realizing that the harrowing events he experienced in Transylvania are real, Jonathan has an opportunity to heal and redeem himself as one of the heroes in this tale. On September 16th, Dr. Seward reports that Renfield is collecting flies and spiders again. Van Helsing arrives with a copy of the Westminster Gazette concerning the Bloofer lady. Seward sees the description of the wounds matches Lucy's, but he can't draw any conclusions. Van Helsing is frustrated that Seward doesn't get it. And on page 182 of the Norton Critical Edition, Van Helsing says, "You are a clever man, friend John. You reason well, and your wits are bold, but you are too prejudiced. You do not let your eyes see, nor your ears hear, and that which is outside of your daily life is not of account to you. Do you not think that there are things which you cannot understand, and yet which are? That some people see things that others cannot? But there are things old and new which must not be contemplated by men's eyes, because they know, or think they know, that some things which other men have told them. Ah, it is the fault of our science that wants to explain it all, and if explain it not, then it says that there is nothing to explain. But yet we see around us every day the growth of new beliefs, which think themselves new, which are not yet but the old, which pretend to be young. Like the fine ladies at the opera, I suppose now you do not believe in corporeal transference? No. Or in materialization? No. Nor in astral bodies? No. Nor in the reading of thoughts? No. Nor in hypnotism. Dr. Seward asks Van Helsing to let him be a student again and recalls a conversation that he had with Quincy Morris. Seward asks if Lucy was bitten by bats that suck blood, and Van Helsing finally reveals that the children's wounds were not made by the same thing that wounded Lucy, but by something much worse. On page 184 of the Norton Critical Edition, at his wit's end, Dr. Seward says, "In God's name, Professor Van Helsing, what do you mean?" I cried. And then he says Van Helsing threw himself with a despairing gesture into a chair and placed his elbows on the table, covering his face with his hands as he spoke. "They were made by Miss Lucy." And that is the end of the chapter. In this week's Substack Deep Dive, we are talking all about Victorian spiritualism and mesmerism. And next week, Professor Van Helsing and Dr. Seward will visit Lucy's tomb.